This property is being seized under National Security Directive, effective immediately. I suggest you pack essentials and vacate within 48 hours, announced Richard Blackwood, sliding a government-stamped document across Sarah Mitchell's kitchen table. His expensive suit and polished demeanor looked jarringly out of place among the half-unpacked moving boxes and worn furniture that filled the farmhouse living room. The early morning light caught his corporate ID badge, Blackwood Security Solutions, as he studied Sarah's face transform from confusion to defiance. For Sarah, this decrepit homestead represented her final chance at a fresh start. After losing her military intelligence job following a whistleblowing incident, then draining her savings through a bitter custody battle, the 35-year-old single mother had scraped together every penny to purchase the abandoned Westridge property at the county auction. The 15 acres of overgrown land and dilapidated 1970s farmhouse on the outskirts of Pine Creek, Oregon, had cost less than a used car, because nobody else wanted it. Now, just 3 weeks after moving in with her 12-year-old daughter, Lily, a private security contractor with apparent government backing, was attempting to take it all away. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 7 weeks later, in a tense Department of Homeland Security boardroom, Blackwood's confident smile vanished as Agent Claudia Reyes placed an evidence folder on the conference table. Our authentication confirms that the documents Ms. Mitchell discovered in the secure room beneath Westridge Homestead contain original encryption codes and operational logs from Operation Silverfish, a classified domestic surveillance program that was officially discontinued in 1991, but apparently continued operating well into the 2000s. This unauthorized continuation implicated several high-ranking officials and private contractors in potentially unconstitutional operations targeting American citizens. Activities deliberately concealed from congressional oversight by the very agencies represented in this room today. Pine Creek had once been known for its stunning mountain views and close-knit community, a charming slice of rural Oregon nestled between the Cascade foothills and the winding Columbia River. Westridge Homestead, with its distinctive A-frame roofline and sprawling property, had stood for over 50 years on the town's eastern edge, positioned atop a ridge that offered unobstructed lines of sight in all directions, a feature that had made it attractive to its original owner for reasons beyond the scenic views. In recent decades, as agricultural economics shifted and the logging industry contracted, many rural properties had fallen into disrepair. Homesteads once valued for their self-sufficient potential became financial burdens, too remote to commute from, too expensive to maintain, but too emotionally significant for long-time owners to simply abandon. The county had struggled for years with balancing rural preservation against economic reality as younger generations moved away in search of opportunities. Sarah Mitchell had never intended to become entangled in government secrets. A former intelligence analyst with a distinguished military career, her life had derailed 3 years earlier when she reported procedural violations within her unit. Though she'd followed every proper channel, the resulting investigation had labeled her difficult and not a team player. The subsequent downsizing had conveniently eliminated her position. The stress had contributed to her divorce, and the lengthy custody battle for Lily had drained her remaining resources. When the Westridge property appeared in a county tax auction for a fraction of market value, Sarah saw it as their last chance to rebuild. "It needs significant work," she had admitted to her skeptical parents on a video call, panning her phone camera across the water-stained ceilings and outdated kitchen. "But the foundation is solid, and there's something about this place that feels right." Lily will have space to breathe and I can telecommute to my contract work. It's all we can afford now. The homestead and land had stood empty for nearly 8 years after Harold Jensen, its reclusive owner, had passed away without heirs, leaving years of unpaid taxes that forced the property into public auction. The once functioning homestead had become an overgrown tangle surrounding a weather-beaten structure that most potential buyers considered beyond salvation. What Sarah saw was possibility, solid structural bones beneath cosmetic neglect, enough land to grow food, and a fresh start away from the painful memories of Washington, D.C. The county had assessed the property at $175,000, but years of back. Taxes and the extensive renovation needs had pushed the starting bid down to just $42,000. When auction day came, Sarah was surprised to find only 2 other bidders, a developer who seemed distracted throughout the proceedings, and an older man who dropped out after the first round. With shaking hands, she signed the papers and became the owner of Westridge Homestead for $43,750, nearly every dollar she had left in the world. "You actually bought the old Jensen place?" The hardware store owner, Mike Donnelly, asked in disbelief when she came in for supplies. The former Marine recognized something in her demeanor immediately: the alert eyes, the efficient way she moved, the strategic approach to her renovation list. One veteran sensing another: "It's been abandoned since old Harold died. What about the rumors?" "What rumors?" Sarah asked, her excitement momentarily dimmed. "Just local talk. People said Jensen was some kind of government man back in the day, that there are things hidden out there, security systems that still activate sometimes, probably just small-town imagination running wild." Sarah and Lily exchanged glances but dismissed the comments as rural folklore. Their focus remained on making the house livable before the harsh Oregon winter arrived. Between Sarah's remote contract work analyzing security protocols for tech companies and her military pension, they had just enough for critical renovations: a new roof, updated electrical systems, and functional plumbing. Evenings and weekends became a blur of demolition and restoration as they stripped away decades of neglect. What Sarah couldn't know was that their purchase had disrupted carefully orchestrated plans. Blackwood Security Solutions, a private intelligence contractor, had been monitoring the property for years, waiting for the right moment to quietly acquire it through their real estate subsidiaries. The Westridge location occupied a strategic position that had once housed sensitive communications equipment with a direct line to national surveillance networks. Equipment that was supposed to have been decommissioned decades earlier, but might still contain recoverable data. CEO Richard Blackwood had assumed the dilapidated homestead would eventually fall into his organization's hands when no serious bidders appeared at the county auction. Sarah Mitchell's unexpected purchase had thrown a wrench into his meticulously planned acquisition. Even more concerning was her background in military intelligence. Of all the potential buyers, she was perhaps the most dangerous person to discover what lay hidden on the property. 4 weeks after purchasing the property, Sarah and Lily had established a renovation rhythm. The kitchen and Lily's bedroom were nearly functional, and Sarah had converted the small den into a temporary office where she could continue her contract work analyzing security protocols for tech companies. It was during what Lily called their treasure hunt demolition, removing water-damaged drywall in what had once been a pantry, that Sarah made a discovery that would lead to something far more significant. "Lily, look at this," she called, revealing what appeared to be a hidden panel behind the damaged wall material. The metal surface was seamless, except for a small digital keypad that looked decades newer than the surrounding structure. "Where did you find that?" Lily asked, setting down her homework to examine the unusual feature. It was concealed behind the pantry wall, Almost like someone renovated around it, Sarah explained, tracing the edge with her fingertip. And look at the keypad. It's much newer than anything else in the house. Someone's been maintaining this. The mother and daughter exchanged glances, both feeling the same flutter of excitement and apprehension. Sarah's military training triggered immediate caution. "Let me check something first," she said, retrieving a small EMF detector from her toolbox, one of the standard tools she used in her security consulting work to check for unauthorized surveillance devices. The detector lit up immediately near the panel. "There's definitely active electronics behind this," she murmured. Working carefully, she examined the area surrounding the panel, noting subtle differences in the construction. The entire wall section was reinforced differently than the rest of the house. "Do you think we can open it?" Lily asked, her 12-year-old curiosity overriding caution. Sarah considered the keypad. "This is a 6-digit entry system. Without the code, we'd need specialized equipment to bypass it." She studied the wear patterns on the keys, noting which numbers showed more use. A basic security analysis technique from her training. "Let me try something." She carefully entered a sequence based on the prior owner's birth year and the property purchase date. Common amateur security choices. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The light remained red. After 2 more failed attempts, she sat back on her heels, thinking. "What about the house number?" Lily suggested. "The old one from before they renumbered the rural routes." Sarah smiled at her daughter's insight. "Worth a try?" She found the original deed among their paperwork and entered the 6-digit property identifier. The keypad emitted a soft beep, the light turned green, and with a pneumatic hiss, the panel slid sideways to reveal a narrow passage, with metal stairs descending into darkness. "Get the flashlight," Sarah whispered, her intelligence training now on high alert. This was no ordinary hidden storage area. The construction was professional, military grade, something she recognized from secure facilities she'd worked in during her service years. The beam cut through accumulated darkness, revealing a small underground room that extended well beyond the foundation of the main house. Unlike the neglected areas above, this space had been maintained, its walls lined with acoustic dampening. Materials, its floor made of poured concrete. The air, though stale, was surprisingly dry thanks to a still-functioning dehumidification system. "This isn't just a bomb shelter," Sarah murmured as they carefully descended the stairs. "This is a secure communications facility." The underground room measured approximately 20 x 30 feet, with a ceiling high enough to stand comfortably. Along one wall stood a series of equipment racks containing what appeared to be communications devices spanning several technological eras, from vacuum tube era receivers to more modern digital systems, though nothing from the last decade. A simple desk occupied one corner with a government-issue filing cabinet beside it. Most telling was the extensive antenna connection system that fed into the ceiling toward what must be concealed exterior equipment. "Mom," Lily whispered, directing. Her flashlight beamed toward one wall. "Look!" Behind a retractable panel was what appeared to be a modern safe with both digital and mechanical locking mechanisms, far newer than anything else in the room. Sarah approached cautiously, examining the safe without touching it. Her trained eye recognized it immediately, a government-grade secure document storage unit, the same model used for classified materials in military installations. Unlike the entry keypad, this would not be easy to bypass. "What is all this stuff?" Lily asked, carefully examining the old communications equipment. Was Mr. Jensen some kind of spy? "Not a spy," Sarah corrected, her mind racing through possibilities. "More likely signals intelligence. This looks like a listening post, designed to intercept and relay communications." She gestured toward the older equipment. This station probably dates to the Cold War. The question is, why was it still being maintained after that ended? The pair spent the next hour carefully documenting their find, taking photos and examining the room without disturbing anything unnecessarily. Sarah's security background told her this was no ordinary discovery. The presence of regularly updated equipment suggested this facility had been operational long after its official decommissioning date. "We should secure this area until we understand what we're dealing with," Sarah finally said, her professional caution overriding curiosity. If this was a government facility, there could be complicated ownership issues we need to sort out. Ooh. As they carefully resealed the hidden entrance, Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Her background in military intelligence gave her enough context to recognize the significance of an off-books communications facility maintained well, past the Cold War era. The real question was why someone had gone to such lengths to keep it operational, and who might still have interest in it. That evening, Sarah sat at their makeshift dining table, the discovery weighing heavily on her mind. Her military training and intelligence background screamed caution, but her financial reality left few options. They had invested everything in this property. They couldn't simply walk away. "What are we going to do?" Lily asked, perceptive as always to her mother's concerns. "First, we research," Sarah replied, already pulling out her laptop. "Let's find out who Harold Jensen really was." The following morning, Sarah drove into town to visit the local library, searching for information about the property's former owner. The Pine Creek Historical Society records were limited, but they confirmed what she suspected. Harold Jensen had worked for the Department of Defense from 1968 until 1991, with his occupation listed vaguely as communications specialist. His purchase of the Westridge property coincided with his government employment, and its isolated position suddenly made strategic sense. What troubled Sarah was the gap in the timeline. Jensen had officially retired in 1991 when many Cold War facilities were decommissioned, but the equipment in the bunker showed updates and maintenance well into the 2000s. Someone had continued operations long after the official mission ended. As Sarah dug deeper, she found something else troubling. Property tax records showed periodic reassessments that never included the underground facility. It was as if the bunker had been deliberately omitted from official documentation, allowing it to exist off the books. When Sarah returned home, she found an unfamiliar truck parked in her driveway. Mike Donnelly from the hardware store stood on her porch, looking uncomfortable. "Thought I should warn you," he said without preamble when she approached. "There were people in the store asking about you today, suits, not locals. They were particularly interested in whether you'd been doing any major renovations or found anything unusual on the property." Sarah kept her expression neutral, despite the alarm bells ringing in her head. "Any idea who they were?" "They claimed to be from the county assessor's office, but I've known Jerry at the assessor's office for 20 years. These weren't his people." Mike hesitated. "Look, I normally mind my own business, but I recognize the type from my time in the service. These were government contractors, not officials. There's a difference in how they carry themselves." "I appreciate the warning," Sarah said carefully. Mike nodded. "Whatever you found out there, and I'm not asking what it might be, just be careful. Jensen was always secretive about that place. Folks around here respected that and kept their distance." He handed her a business card with his personal number scrawled on the back. "Call if you need anything. Us veterans should stick together." After he left, Sarah implemented basic security protocols, checking the perimeter of the property, securing entries, and setting up simple alert systems that would warn of intruders. Her military training had never felt more relevant. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Sarah returned to the hidden entrance. Whatever was in that safe might explain why people were suddenly interested in the property. Using her security expertise and some equipment from her consulting work, she began the methodical process of analyzing the safe's locking mechanism. 3 hours later, with sweat beading on her forehead from concentration, she finally bypassed the system. The safe door swung open to reveal several sealed document cases and a small metal box. With gloved hands, she carefully examined the contents. The documents were immediately recognizable to her trained eye. Classified operation logs, communication transcripts, and most alarmingly, records of domestic surveillance activities dated well after such programs had supposedly been discontinued. The materials detailed Operation Silverfish, which had officially ended with the Cold War, but appeared to have transitioned into an unauthorized domestic surveillance program targeting American citizens, politicians, journalists, and activists. Most disturbing were the more recent files, dated less than 5 years ago, that contained transcripts of intercepted communications from the very agency she had once worked for. The operation had gone completely rogue, operating without official authorization, but with the apparent knowledge of certain high-level officials and private contractors. The small metal box contained digital storage devices and encryption keys, carefully labeled and organized. Sarah recognized them as authentication protocols that would validate the documents, proving they weren't forgeries, but genuine government records. Her blood ran cold as she noted familiar names in the operation logs, including Richard Blackwood, then a junior officer, now CEO of one of the largest private intelligence firms contracting with the government. The documents directly implicated him in illegal surveillance operations conducted from this very facility. Sarah carefully returned everything to the safe except for one digital drive that she secured in her pocket. She resealed the hidden entrance and returned upstairs, her mind racing with the implications. She had unwittingly purchased property containing evidence of illegal operations conducted by powerful people who now had every reason to want these records destroyed, and who now knew she was living there. As she checked on her sleeping daughter, Sarah realized the danger they were in. These weren't simply historical documents. They were evidence of ongoing criminal activities conducted by people with resources and government connections. People who now knew exactly where to find her. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of vehicles approaching. Through the kitchen window, she saw 3 black SUVs pulling into her driveway. The lead vehicle bore a small corporate logo she recognized immediately, Blackwood Security Solutions. Sarah moved quickly, waking Lily and implementing the emergency plan she'd mentally prepared during the night. "Remember our bug-out drills?" she whispered, referring to the preparedness exercises they'd practiced as a game over the years. "This is real. Grab your go-bag and meet me at the back door in 2 minutes." As Lily moved silently to comply, years of her mother's security-conscious parenting kicking in, Sarah quickly secured the digital drive in a waterproof container and concealed it in Lily's backpack. Whatever happened next, the evidence needed to survive. Just as they slipped out the back door and into the dense tree line that bordered the property, there was a sharp knock at the front door. Sarah guided her daughter along a path she'd scouted during their first days on the property, one that led to an old logging road where Mike Donnelly had agreed to meet them after her late-night phone call. As they disappeared into the forest, Sarah could hear men entering their home behind them. The battle for Westridge Homestead and the explosive secrets beneath it had begun. Mike Donnelly's weathered pickup truck idled quietly on the logging road, exactly where he promised to be. Sarah and Lily emerged from the dense tree line, breathing hard from their half-mile trek through the underbrush. The hardware store owner's expression was grim as he helped them into the vehicle. "Saw the convoy heading up your road," he said, putting the truck in gear and accelerating down the gravel path. "Government plates under private tags. Bad business." "They're not government," Sarah replied, checking to ensure Lily was securely buckled in. "At least, not officially." Mike nodded, understanding the distinction. Got a place you can lay low? Sarah hesitated. Her instinct was to say nothing. Operational security had been drilled into her during her military career, but they needed allies, and her gut told her the fellow veteran could be trusted. We need to get to Portland. I have a contact there. Who might help? 6-hour drive in good weather. Mike glanced at the threatening sky. And there's a storm coming in. They'll have the main roads watched. We need back roads then, and possibly a different vehicle. Sarah's mind was already calculating options, weighing risks. Mike took a sharp turn onto an even smaller forest road. My brother-in-law runs a garage in Riverdale. He owes me favors, and I know these mountains better than any private security team from the city. As the truck wound deeper into the Cascade foothills, Sarah briefed Lily on what was happening. She'd always been honest with her daughter, a policy developed after her own experiences with government obfuscation. The men back there work for a private company with government contracts. They want something that was hidden in our house, evidence of things they've done that they don't want anyone to know about. Lily's expression was serious beyond her 12 years. The listening post was still being used when it shouldn't have been. Sarah nodded, impressed by her daughter's quick understanding. Exactly, and we have proof of that now. She gestured to Lily's backpack. You're carrying evidence that could expose years of illegal surveillance operations. Is that why we're running instead of calling the police? Lily asked. Local authorities wouldn't have jurisdiction over national security matters, Sarah explained, and we don't know who at the federal level might be compromised. These operations had high-level protection. The gravity of their situation settled over the truck's cabin as rain began to patter against the windshield. Mike navigated the increasingly slick mountain roads with the confidence of someone who had driven them all his life. What exactly did you find out there? He finally asked. Sarah measured her response carefully. Evidence that Westridge wasn't just a Cold War relic. It remained operational as an unauthorized listening post well into recent years. Someone was using that facility to monitor communications they had no legal right to access. Mike whistled low. And now they're cleaning up loose ends. Exactly. By late afternoon, they'd reached Riverdale, a town even smaller than Pine Creek. Mike's brother-in-law, Dave, asked no questions when they arrived at his garage, just nodded at whatever. Mike whispered to him and handed over the keys to a nondescript 10-year-old sedan with Oregon plates. It's registered to the garage as a loaner vehicle, Dave explained. Nothing to trace back to any of us individually. Sarah transferred their minimal belongings to the sedan, keeping Lily's backpack with the crucial evidence close. We need to thank you properly for this, she began, but Mike waved her off. Just take care of your girl, he said, and whatever you found, make sure the right people get it. As they prepared to depart, Mike pressed a prepaid cell phone into Sarah's hand. It's clean, bought with cash months ago. My number's programmed. Check in when you can, so I know you're safe. The simple kindness nearly broke through Sarah's carefully maintained composure. In the 3 weeks they'd lived in Pine Creek, she and Lily had barely begun to know their neighbors. Yet here was one risking himself to help them simply on the principle that veterans looked out for each other. We'll make this right, she promised. Highway 84 would have been the direct route to Portland, but Sarah opted instead for a complex network of county roads that wound through small towns and farm country. The sedan's heater fought against the growing chill as darkness fell and the Oregon rain intensified. Lily had been unusually quiet, processing their sudden flight with remarkable composure. Where are we going in Portland? She finally asked. To see Dr. Daniel Kim, Sarah replied, checking the rearview mirror for the 20th time in as many minutes. He was a cryptography consultant who worked with my unit. He's retired now, but he still has connections we need. Can he help? Us with the evidence? Sarah nodded. If anyone can authenticate those files and get them to trustworthy authorities, it's Dr. Kim. He's been vocal about surveillance overreach for years, one of the few respected voices willing to criticize the intelligence community from within. As they approached Portland city limits around 9 p.m., Sarah made a decision. Rather than heading directly to Dr. Kim's home in the Southwest Hills, she pulled into the parking lot of a busy shopping center. "We need to be careful about leading anyone to him," she explained, reaching for the prepaid phone. "I'm going to call first and arrange a meeting somewhere public." Dr. Kim answered on the second ring, his voice exactly as Sarah remembered it, precise and measured, with the faintest trace of his soul childhood still coloring his accent after 50 years. "In America." "This is unexpected," he said when she identified herself. There was neither warmth nor suspicion in his tone, just careful neutrality. "I need your help, Professor. It concerns unauthorized domestic surveillance operations, specifically Operation Silverfish." The silence that followed was profound. When Dr. Kim finally spoke, his voice had dropped to nearly a whisper. "That name shouldn't be known to anyone below clearance level 8. Nevertheless, I have extensive documentation about its continued operation well past the official shutdown date. Documentation that certain people are very motivated to recover." Another lengthy pause. "Where are you now?" "Portland, with my daughter." "Your daughter is with you?" Concern finally penetrated his professional reserve. "How imminent is the threat?" "We evacuated our home this morning when Blackwood security vehicles arrived." "Richard Blackwood?" The name clearly registered. "Come to Powell's Books on Burnside, the rare bookroom on the top floor. 1 hour. Look like browsing tourists." The call ended abruptly. Sarah stared at the phone, weighing options. Dr. Kim's reaction had confirmed her suspicions about the significance of what they'd discovered. His caution also suggested he understood the potential danger. "Change of clothes," she told Lily, reaching for their hastily packed bag. "And we need to alter our appearances somewhat." 20 minutes later, they entered Powell's Books, looking like typical tourists sheltering from the rain. Sarah with her hair tucked under a newly purchased baseball cap, Lily wearing a Portland Trail Blazers hoodie that was 2 sizes too large. The famous bookstore was busy even on a weeknight, providing the anonymous crowd they needed. They browsed methodically through several sections before making their way to the rare bookroom on the upper floor. The space was quieter, with only a few serious collectors examining the glass-enclosed displays. Dr. Kim sat in a reading chair in the corner, a large art book open on his lap. At 73, he looked older than Sarah remembered, his hair now fully silver, his posture slightly stooped, but his eyes remained sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He gave no sign of recognition as they approached, just continued turning pages as they examined a nearby shelf. Only when they were directly beside him did he speak, and even then without looking up. "You're being followed. 2 men, dark jackets. They entered 3 minutes after you." Sarah kept her expression neutral, reaching for a book while scanning the room's reflection in the glass display case. She identified them immediately. Men with the unmistakable stance and alertness of security professionals, pretending to browse, while maintaining sightlines to her position. "How did they track us?" she murmured, angling her body to block Lily from their view. "Your vehicle, perhaps, or facial recognition on traffic cameras." Dr. Kim closed his book deliberately. "We need to move. There's a staff exit through the rare manuscripts section. My car is in the employee lot. We can't risk leading them to you," Sarah protested. "Too late for that concern. I've been on watch lists for years." He stood slowly, the movement of an elderly academic rather than a man executing an evasion plan. "Browse toward the northwest corner. I'll create a diversion near the main staircase." Sarah guided Lily through the shelves, maintaining a casual pace while keeping track of their pursuers through peripheral vision. When they reached the corner furthest from the staircase, a commotion erupted across the room. Dr. Kim had apparently collapsed against a display, sending valuable books tumbling. Staff and customers converged on the scene, including one of the men following them. "Now," Sarah whispered, spotting the unmarked door, partly concealed behind a restoration cabinet. They slipped through into a narrow service corridor. Following Dr. Kim's instructions, they descended a freight elevator to the building's lower level and exited through a shipping area into a small parking lot reserved for employees. Dr. Kim's silver Volvo was exactly where he'd said it would. With keys hidden above the driver's side wheel well, Sarah quickly secured Lily in the back seat and started the engine, navigating through service alleys behind the downtown buildings before emerging onto a side street 6 blocks from Powell's. "What about Dr. Kim?" Lily asked, concern evident in her voice. "He'll be fine," Sarah assured her, though not entirely convinced herself. "He's creating plausible deniability. If they confront him, he's just an old man who had a dizzy spell in a bookstore." They drove in tense silence for 20 minutes, taking a circuitous route through Portland neighborhoods, before Sarah felt confident they weren't being followed. Only then did she enter the address Dr. Kim had whispered to her during their brief interaction. Not his home address, as she'd expected, but a location in the industrial district near the Willamette River. The warehouse appeared abandoned at first glance, its brick exterior weathered and windows obscured with decades of grime. Only a single security light illuminated the small parking area where Sarah cautiously brought the Volvo to a stop. She hesitated before exiting the vehicle, instincts warning her this could be a trap. "Stay in the car," she instructed Lily. "Lock the doors. If anything seems wrong, use the phone to call Mike." Sarah approached the warehouse's side door cautiously, noting with professional interest the modern security measures discreetly integrated into the apparently decrepit structure. Cameras, concealed in broken light fixtures, motion sensors disguised as loose wiring. This was no ordinary abandoned building. Before she could decide on her next move, the door opened to reveal Dr. Kim, slightly disheveled but otherwise unharmed. "You made good time," he commented, stepping aside to let her enter. "The girl should come in too. It's not safe in the open." The interior belied the warehouse's external appearance. While maintaining an industrial aesthetic, the space had been converted into a functional living and working environment. One section contained living quarters, sparse but comfortable. The remainder housed what appeared to be a sophisticated private research facility with multiple workstations and secure communication equipment. "Welcome to what my former colleagues call my conspiracy bunker," Dr. Kim said with the faintest hint of irony. "Appropriate, given your discovery." Once Lily was safely inside and the security system reactivated, Dr. Kim led them to a small conference area separated from the main space by portable dividers. "Now," he said, settling into a chair that accommodated his clearly arthritic frame, "tell me exactly what you found at Westridge." Sarah recounted the discovery of the hidden room and its contents, while Lily carefully removed the digital drive from her backpack. As she spoke, Dr. Kim's expression grew increasingly troubled. "Jensen was Silverfish's original signals coordinator," he confirmed when she finished. "The official record states the operation terminated in 1991 after the Soviet collapse rendered it obsolete. Clearly, that wasn't entirely accurate. The facility was maintained and updated for at least 15 more years," Sarah said. "The last equipment installation date I observed was 2016. Dr. Kim's eyebrows rose. 5 years after Jensen's death, someone else had access. And the documentation we found implicates Richard Blackwood directly. He appears to have repurposed the listening post for domestic surveillance after joining the private sector. Dr. Kim nodded slowly. Blackwood Security holds contracts with 17 federal agencies. Their systems are integrated with national intelligence infrastructure. If he maintained unauthorized access to signals intelligence, he could sell information to the highest bidder while using official contracts as cover. Sarah finished. Corporate espionage, political blackmail, the possibilities are endless, which makes what you've discovered extraordinarily dangerous. Dr. Kim glanced at the digital drive Lily had placed on the table. For both Blackwood and certain government officials who must have facilitated this arrangement. He rose stiffly and retrieved specialized equipment from a nearby workstation, a standalone computer system entirely disconnected from external networks. Let's see what you've brought me. The drive contained exactly what Sarah expected: operational logs, surveillance transcripts, and most damning of all, financial records showing payments to various shell companies linked to both Blackwood and several high-ranking intelligence officials. The domestic surveillance had focused primarily on corporate targets, executives whose private communications would be valuable to competitors, but also included journalists investigating government contractors and politicians overseeing intelligence budgets. This is far worse than I anticipated, Dr. Kim murmured, methodically examining the files. They've been running a private intelligence operation using government resources for commercial gain. Sarah watched him work, noting the precision that had made him legendary within intelligence circles. Despite his age, Dr. Kim's analysis was still razor-sharp as he authenticated digital signatures and cross-referenced code names with known operations. The encryption protocols are genuine, he finally confirmed. These are authentic classified documents. The cryptographic signatures cannot be forged. So we have proof, Sarah said. Evidence, Dr. Kim corrected. Proof requires proper channels and legal process, neither of which will be easy to navigate given who is implicated. He rose and paced the small area, his scientist's mind visibly processing possibilities. We need to secure this evidence with multiple trustworthy parties simultaneously. Redundancy is essential when confronting this level of influence. Who can we trust? Sarah asked the question that had been haunting her since their discovery. Within official channels. Dr. Kim's expression was grim. Very few. But I've maintained relationships with certain journalists and independent oversight groups precisely for situations like this. He turned to face them fully, his decision apparently made. You'll stay here tonight. This facility has defensive measures and is unknown to my former colleagues. Tomorrow morning, I'll arrange secure transport to Washington. There's a Senate Intelligence Committee staffer, formerly one of my students, who has been investigating private intelligence contractors for months. With this evidence, she'll have the leverage needed for formal hearings. Blackwood will have people watching transportation hubs, Sarah warned, which is why we won't use commercial transport. A tight smile appeared briefly on Dr. Kim's face. Some of us old cold warriors maintained contingency plans long after retirement. There are benefits to being paranoid in our profession. He showed them to the living quarters, a small but clean apartment built into one corner of the warehouse. Rest. I need to make arrangements. Left alone with Lily, Sarah finally allowed herself a moment to process the day's events. They'd fled their home, evaded pursuit, and discovered their modest rural property had placed them at the center of what could become a major intelligence scandal. Through it all, Lily had shown remarkable resilience. You okay, kiddo? She asked, sitting beside her daughter on the utilitarian sofa. Lily nodded slowly. It's like one of your emergency drills, except real. I'm sorry about the house, Sarah said quietly. I know you were excited about making it ours. Will we ever be able to go back? Sarah considered lying. then opted for honesty. "I don't know. If we can get this evidence to the right people, maybe, but it won't be simple. Because powerful people don't like being exposed," Lily observed with that precocious insight that sometimes startled Sarah. "Exactly. I'm not sorry we found it," Lily decided after a moment. "If Mr. Jensen hid that evidence, he must have wanted someone to find it eventually. Otherwise, he would have destroyed it." Sarah pulled her daughter close. "You're pretty smart for a 12-year-old, you know that?" "I had a good teacher," Lily replied, leaning into the embrace. They tried to rest, but sleep proved elusive in the unfamiliar surroundings. Around midnight, they heard Dr. Kim moving about in the main space, his voice occasionally audible as he spoke on secure communications equipment. Sarah resisted the urge to eavesdrop, though her training made it difficult not to assess potential threats and escape routes, even in this supposedly secure location. Shortly after 2 a.m., alarms blared throughout the facility. Sarah was instantly alert, moving to the door while positioning Lily behind her. Dr. Kim appeared moments later, his expression tense. "Perimeter breach," he explained tersely. "Multiple. Hostiles approaching from the east loading area." "Blackwood's people?" Sarah asked, already scanning for weapons. "Unlikely they found this location so quickly, unless, Dr. Kim's expression darkened. "The car. Did you check it for tracking devices?" Sarah's stomach dropped. In her haste to evacuate Lily from Powell's, she'd neglected the most basic counterintelligence procedure. "I assumed it was clean, since it came from your associate." "Never assume." The reprimand was gentle but firm. "We need to move. The defensive systems will buy us time, but this facility wasn't designed to withstand a determined assault." He led them to what appeared to be an industrial freezer door at the rear of the warehouse. When opened, it revealed not food storage, but a tunnel extending beneath the adjacent property. Portland has an extensive network of utility tunnels and obsolete civil defense structures, Dr. Kim explained, activating a series of battery-powered lights along the passage. "This connects to the basement of a building I own 3 blocks east. From there, we can access emergency transportation." As they moved quickly through the narrow concrete passage, Sarah heard muffled explosions behind them. The warehouse's defensive measures engaging. She couldn't help wondering if Dr. Kim's precautions had anticipated this specific scenario, or if this was standard preparation for former intelligence personnel of his generation. The tunnel ended at a steel ladder leading to a mechanical room filled with heating equipment and electrical panels. Dr. Kim moved with surprising agility for his age, leading them through the building's basement to a freight elevator. The building above is a technology incubator I fund through a shell company, he explained as they ascended. The loading dock has vehicle access without street visibility. The elevator opened onto a small warehouse space where 3 vehicles waited, a delivery van, a utility truck, and a black SUV with government plates. "Transportation options," Dr. Kim gestured to the vehicles. "The SUV is most defensible, but also most conspicuous. The van offers concealment but less protection. The utility truck splits the difference. Moderate armor in the cab, company livery that won't attract attention." Sarah assessed the options with professional detachment. "The utility truck. Can you drive it?" Dr. Kim nodded. "I maintain licenses for all vehicle classes. A habit from my field days." They quickly transferred to the truck, Lily secured in the center of the bench seat between them. As the loading dock door rose, Dr. Kim handed Sarah a tablet displaying security camera feeds from around the building. "Monitoring teams approaching from the north and west," he noted. "Will go south, then loop east toward the interstate." Doom. The utility truck merged smoothly into late-night Portland traffic, its water company logos providing the perfect mundane cover. Dr. Kim drove with the confidence of someone who had conducted countless evasion exercises, varying speed and changing lanes just enough to be difficult to track without drawing attention. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked as they crossed the Willamette River. "First, to secure the evidence," Dr. Kim replied. "I maintain a safety deposit box at a private vault facility in Vancouver. We'll duplicate the files and store one copy there. And then to SeaTac Airport, where a private medical transport will be waiting. My arrangements accelerated somewhat by tonight's events." Sarah glanced at him sharply. "Medical transport? I have stage 3 pancreatic cancer," he stated matter-of-factly. "Diagnosed 6 months ago. It provides excellent cover for emergency travel as it happens." "Udim." The simple declaration stunned Sarah into momentary silence. Dr. Kim continued driving, his expression unchanged. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "Don't be. We all face our ending eventually. What matters is using whatever time remains effectively." He glanced briefly at Lily, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion and was sleeping against Sarah's shoulder. "Besides, this situation offers an unexpected opportunity to address certain regrets from my professional life. The surveillance programs you helped create," Sarah guessed, "tools designed for foreign intelligence that were gradually repurposed for domestic control," he confirmed. "I left government service when that shift began, but perhaps I should have done more than simply walk away." They drove in silence for several miles, each processing the gravity of their situation from different perspectives. Sarah found herself unexpectedly grateful for Dr. Kim's involvement, not just for his resources and connections, but for his clear-eyed understanding of what they were facing. "Richard Blackwood will have federal resources at his disposal," she finally said. "Private contractors often receive support from their government clients, especially when operational security is at stake." "Indeed, which is why we're not going directly to Washington." Dr. Kim took an exit toward Vancouver. "First, we establish the evidence in multiple secure locations. Then we contact my former student at the Senate Intelligence Committee. Only once we have official protection do we surface." The private vault facility operated 24/7, its clientele specifically those requiring discretion and security beyond what traditional banks offered. Dr. Kim was clearly a known client. The armed guard at the entrance nodded in recognition and conducted only a cursory ID verification before allowing them access. Inside a private transaction room, Dr. Kim efficiently duplicated the files from the digital drive onto 2 separate encrypted devices. One went into a safety deposit box requiring dual authentication. The other he secured in an inside pocket. "Redundancy," he explained. "If anything happens to us, I've arranged for the existence and location of this evidence to be revealed to multiple journalists and oversight organizations." As they returned to the utility truck, Sarah noticed Lily was fully awake now, observing everything with quiet intensity. "You okay?" she asked softly. Lily nodded. "It's like a spy movie, except real people might get hurt." The simple observation carried more insight than many adults might manage. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's why we're being so careful. The evidence is what matters, getting it to people who can use it properly." The drive to SeaTac Airport took nearly 3 hours, complicated by the need to avoid main highways where license plate readers might flag their vehicle. Dr. Kim navigated backroads with confidence, occasionally consulting a tablet that displayed what appeared to be real-time security information. "My former colleagues aren't the only ones with surveillance networks," he noted when Sarah commented on his apparent access to traffic camera feeds. "Some of us have been building alternative information systems for years, just in case they were needed." Dawn was breaking as they approached the airport from its service entrance rather than the main terminal. Dr. Kim's tablet indicated their destination, a private aviation facility serving charter and medical flights. The medical transport is scheduled for 6:30 a.m., he explained as they parked in an employee lot and transferred to a waiting shuttle. Will be processed as a specialist and family members accompanying a patient for treatment at Johns Hopkins. The flight plan will show Baltimore as our destination. But we're not going to Baltimore, Sarah guessed. The flight will be diverted mid-journey due to a medical emergency, requiring a landing at Andrews Air Force Base, where my contact will meet us with appropriate security. It was an elegant plan, using real medical necessity as cover, while ensuring they would be met by legitimate federal authorities beyond Blackwood's immediate reach. Sarah found herself impressed once again by the thoroughness of Dr. Kim's preparations. The medical transport company processed them efficiently, accepting Dr. Kim's documentation without question. Within 40 minutes, they were boarding a specially equipped Gulfstream jet staffed by an actual medical team, apparently another contingency arrangement from Dr. Kim's extensive network. As the aircraft taxied toward the runway, Sarah allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. They had secured the evidence, evaded immediate pursuit, and were now en route to Washington with legitimate protection awaiting them. For the first time since discovering the hidden room beneath her kitchen, she dared to hope they might successfully expose the illegal surveillance operation. That hope lasted precisely 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Just as the aircraft reached the runway threshold, preparing for takeoff, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. We've been instructed to return to the terminal. Air traffic control has received a federal security directive requiring all passengers to deplane for additional screening. Sarah met Dr. Kim's eyes across the cabin, the same realization reflected in both their expressions. Blackwood had managed to leverage his government connections to ground the flight. They've cut off our escape route, she said quietly. Dr. Kim's normally impassive face showed a flicker of genuine concern. And we've just placed ourselves in a controlled environment with limited exit options. The aircraft turned slowly, rolling back toward the private aviation terminal. Through the window, Sarah could see vehicles already approaching. Black SUVs with darkened windows, unmistakably federal or intelligence community transportation. Lily gripped her mother's hand tightly. What do we do now? Before Sarah could answer, Dr. Kim was already in motion, speaking rapidly to the medical staff while retrieving an item from his carry-on bag. He returned to their section of the cabin holding what appeared to be a satellite phone, considerably more advanced than commercial models. Alternative communications, he explained, activating the device. Direct link to my contact at the Intelligence Committee. We may have lost the advantage of secure transport, but we still have the evidence and witnesses. As the aircraft came to a stop beside the terminal, Sarah could see figures emerging from the vehicles, men in suits with the unmistakable bearing of federal agents. Among them was a face she recognized immediately from news broadcasts and intelligence briefings. Richard Blackwood himself, looking confident as he directed the operation. They're not taking any chances, she observed grimly. Blackwood is personally overseeing this. Dr. Kim completed his call and turned to face them fully, his expression resolute. My contact is activating emergency protocols, but it will take time for legitimate federal authorities to intervene. We need to survive the next few hours. They can't simply disappear 3 people from an airport, Sarah argued, though without much conviction. Her intelligence career had taught her exactly how much could be hidden under the guise of national security. Under normal circumstances, no, Dr. Kim agreed. But with the proper paperwork and claimed national security justification, we could find ourselves in a black site before anyone asks questions. The aircraft door opened and 2 men in TSA uniforms appeared at the entrance, flanked by individuals Sarah instantly identified as intelligence community personnel, despite their lack of identifying insignia. Dr. Daniel Kim. One called into the cabin. We need you and your traveling companions to come with us for additional security screening. Dr. Kim rose slowly, his movements once again those of a frail elderly man, rather than the decisive operative he'd been moments before. I'm a terminal cancer patient traveling for specialized treatment, he protested, his voice suddenly weak and tremulous. Surely, whatever verification you need can be conducted without delaying critical medical care. The performance was masterful, a lifetime of fieldcraft distilled into the perfect cover persona. But Sarah could see it wouldn't be sufficient. The men entering the aircraft were not regular transportation security. They were experienced, operators who wouldn't be deterred by sympathy plays. As they approached, Dr. Kim leaned close to Sarah, his voice dropping to a whisper. Whatever happens next, remember, the evidence is what matters, not any individual person. The cryptic statement sent a chill through Sarah as the security team reached their seats. Dr. Kim, Sarah Mitchell, and Lily Mitchell, the lead agent stated, reading from a tablet. You'll need to come with us immediately for questioning regarding a matter of national security. Sarah stood protectively in front of Lily. We'll require legal representation before answering any questions. This isn't a criminal matter, Ms. Mitchell, the agent replied smoothly. It's a national security protocol. Different rules apply. Deal. As they were escorted from the aircraft, Sarah noticed Richard Blackwood waiting just inside the terminal building, his expression one of calculated triumph. The digital evidence they carried might be damning, but it was clear Blackwood believed his influence sufficient to contain the situation. What none of them could know was that Dr. Kim's final call had set in motion events beyond even Blackwood's considerable reach, and that the true battle for Westridge Homestead's secrets was just beginning. The private security suite at SeaTac Airport was designed to process high-value detainees without public visibility, a liminal space that existed somewhere between legitimate federal jurisdiction and corporate control. Sarah catalogued every detail as they were escorted inside. 2 exits, keycard access, surveillance cameras with coverage gaps near the ventilation ducts, 4 armed personnel with contractor badges rather than government credentials. Please surrender all electronic devices, instructed a woman in a charcoal suit whose bearings suggested military background despite her civilian attire. When Sarah hesitated, the woman's expression hardened. Cooperation will determine how comfortable this process remains, especially for the minor. The implied threat toward Lily forced Sarah's compliance. She surrendered the prepaid phone Mike had given them, watching as Dr. Kim likewise relinquished his specialized satellite device. They were separated immediately afterward, Dr. Kim taken through a door marked Interview A, while Sarah and Lily were directed to a smaller room designated Family Holding. The room contained little more than a table, 3 chairs, and a water cooler. No windows, a single door, and a surveillance camera mounted in the corner. Sarah positioned Lily in the chair furthest from the door and leaned close, keeping her voice at a whisper beneath the soft hum of the ventilation system. Remember what we practiced? If we get separated, go to the fallback location. It was a protocol Sarah had established years ago. Every city they visited, she identified a public gathering place where Lily should go if they were ever separated during an emergency. Lily nodded almost imperceptibly. The Central Library, downtown, children's section. Wait until closing, then ask for help from a librarian named Lisa. Good girl. The evidence is what matters now. The door opened before Lily could respond. Richard Blackwood entered alone, projecting an air of casual authority as he closed the door behind him. In person, he was taller than he appeared in media photos, well over 6 feet, with the physique of someone who maintained military fitness standards despite his corporate position. His calculated smile never reached his eyes. "Ms. Mitchell, we haven't been formally introduced. Richard Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Security Solutions." He extended a hand, which Sarah deliberately ignored. "I recognize you from the intelligence briefings," she replied evenly. "Your company lost the Kandahar security contract after that civilian transport incident. 12 casualties, as I recall." The smile tightened fractionally. A minor victory in what Sarah knew would be a prolonged psychological battle. Blackwood smoothly withdrew his hand and took a seat across from them. A regrettable situation, misrepresented by media with limited understanding of combat zone realities. He glanced at Lily, then back to Sarah. "I had hoped we might speak privately. These matters aren't appropriate for young ears." "My daughter stays with me," Sarah stated flatly, "and I believe we're both entitled to legal representation before any questioning." Blackwood leaned back, studying them with clinical detachment. "This isn't an arrest, Ms. Mitchell. It's a national security consultation regarding classified materials removed from a federal installation. Westridge Homestead was purchased legally at public auction. Nothing in the property disclosures mentioned federal ownership. Certain government assets aren't publicly documented for obvious reasons." Blackwood's tone remained conversational. "The listening post beneath your property was constructed under a compartmentalized program. When Harold Jensen died, Standard D procedure would have been facility decommissioning and removal. Unfortunately, budget constraints delayed that process, leaving an active signals intelligence facility unsecured for years," Sarah observed. "Quite the oversight." Blackwood's expression hardened momentarily before he regained his professional composure. "The facility was dormant, not active. Any documentation suggesting otherwise was likely falsified by Jensen himself. He became increasingly paranoid in his final years." It was a practiced response delivered with conviction, the kind of plausible deniability that would satisfy most oversight committees. But Sarah had seen the evidence herself. Equipment upgrades dated years after Jensen's death, operational logs with Blackwood's own authorization codes. "Perhaps we could discuss a mutually beneficial resolution," Blackwood continued, shifting. "Strategies. Your military record was exemplary before the unfortunate incident that led to your separation from service. Patriotic individuals like yourself understand the complexities of national security operations. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Blackwood?" A thin smile. "I'm suggesting there might be a role for someone with your expertise in our organization, one that would provide financial security for your daughter's future. Private sector compensation considerably exceeds government pay scales. In exchange for forgetting what we found beneath our house. In exchange for participating in proper, secure handling of sensitive materials. Materials that, in the wrong context, could compromise legitimate national security operations." Sarah met his gaze directly. "And Dr. Kim, would he receive a similar offer?" "Dr. Kim's situation is more complicated. His history of public criticism makes him less amenable to security considerations." The implied threat wasn't subtle. Sarah glanced at Lily, who was observing the exchange with unsettling perception. Her daughter had always been preternaturally observant, a trait that made Sarah simultaneously proud and concerned. "I need to consult with Dr. Kim before considering any arrangement," Sarah replied, buying time while assessing options. Blackwood nodded as if this were a reasonable business negotiation rather than a thinly veiled detention. "Of course. I'll arrange a brief conference. In the meantime, we've prepared more comfortable accommodations for you and your daughter." He stood and opened the door, gesturing to someone in the hallway. A woman entered pushing a cart containing sandwiches, fruit and bottled water. Please make yourselves comfortable. I understand this situation is disruptive, especially for a child. Rest assured, we want to resolve this matter quickly and discreetly. After Blackwood departed, Sarah inspected the food without touching it. Standard protocol dictated caution with anything provided during detention. Lily watched her with understanding beyond her years. They might have put something in it, the girl observed quietly. Sarah nodded. We'll wait on eating. Keep hydrated. With water from the cooler instead, it's harder to tamper with a sealed system. They sat in silence for nearly 40 minutes before the door opened again. 2 security personnel escorted them to a different section of the facility, one with the appearance of executive accommodations rather than detention quarters. The suite contained comfortable furniture, a small kitchenette, and even age-appropriate books that suggested specific preparation for Lily's presence. You'll meet with Dr. Kim shortly, one of the escorts informed them. Mr. Blackwood has arranged for dinner to be delivered. Is there anything specific the child would prefer? The solicitous treatment was clearly calculated to establish a cooperative atmosphere. Sarah recognized the technique from her own training. Create comfort, suggest normalcy, make compliance seem like the most natural response. My daughter has food allergies, she improvised. We'll need to see ingredient lists for anything provided. Left alone in the suite, Sarah conducted a thorough sweep for surveillance devices while maintaining casual conversation for any listeners. She identified 3 visible cameras and likely audio monitoring throughout the space. There were no windows, and the door had been secured from outside. They were in a well-appointed prison. When Lily went to examine the bookshelf, Sarah used the opportunity to quickly check her daughter's backpack. The digital drive was gone, confiscated during their initial processing. The most critical evidence was now in Blackwood's possession. 2 hours passed before they were escorted to a conference room where Dr. Kim waited. The elderly cryptographer looked tired but composed, his hands folded neatly on the table before him. When he saw them enter, a flicker of relief crossed his face. "You've been treated appropriately?" he asked, his tone revealing nothing of his own circumstances. "Well enough," Sarah replied, noting the security personnel who remained positioned by the door. "They've taken the evidence." Dr. Kim nodded once. "As expected, Mr. Blackwood has made his position clear. He offered me employment." A thin smile touched the older man's lips. "How generous." "I received a different proposition, immediate medical transport to any treatment facility worldwide, with all expenses covered through a newly established foundation." "Buying compliance through compassion," Sarah observed. "Effective strategy." "Indeed, particularly when genuine treatment options are limited." Dr. Kim's gaze shifted momentarily to Lily, then back to Sarah. "I've requested time to consider the offer, given my medical prognosis." Mr. Blackwood seemed amenable to a brief deliberation period. The subtext was clear. Dr. Kim was playing for time, but for what purpose? His earlier call must have set something in motion, but without knowing the details, Sarah could only follow his lead and maintain their position. "I've made a similar request," she confirmed. "Family considerations require careful thought." Dr. Kim nodded with apparent satisfaction. "Perhaps we might be permitted to dine together this evening. I find difficult decisions are often clearer after shared conversation." The security officer by the door touched his earpiece, apparently receiving instructions, then nodded. "That can be arranged, provided discussions remain appropriate for the minor's presence." They were escorted back to the suite where Sarah and Lily had been held, with Dr. Kim accompanying them. Once inside, the elderly scientist moved to the kitchenette and began preparing tea with deliberate movements. As the electric kettle heated, he gestured for them to join him. "Seattle has remarkable water quality," he observed, his voice pitched. to carry normally while his hands shifted subtly to indicate the surveillance devices, essential for proper tea preparation. Sarah understood immediately. Dr. Kim was establishing cover for conversation. The kettle's whistle would provide momentary audio masking. She positioned herself and Lily closer to the counter where the sound would be loudest. When the kettle reached its crescendo, Dr. Kim leaned forward under the pretense of reaching for cups. "My call reached Senator Levine directly," he whispered. "Federal marshals have been dispatched with Senate Intelligence Committee authorization. Estimated arrival within 2 hours." The kettle's whistle subsided as he straightened, continuing his normal tea preparation. "One sugar or two?" he asked at conversational volume. "One, please," Sarah replied, processing this critical information. Senate committee intervention represented legitimate federal authority that even Blackwood's connections couldn't easily override. The question was whether they could maintain their position until help arrived. As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Kim carefully placed tea bags in 3 cups. "Patience yields clarity," he remarked, "even in dire circumstances." The meal Blackwood had promised arrived 30 minutes later, an elaborate spread clearly designed to reinforce the illusion of hospitality rather than detention. They ate sparingly, maintaining conversation that revealed nothing, while Dr. Kim occasionally glanced at his watch. Each minute brought them closer to potential extraction, but also increased the risk that Blackwood would escalate his approach if he suspected intervention was imminent. At precisely 7:42 p.m., the facility's lights flickered momentarily. Dr. Kim's expression remained neutral, but Sarah caught the slight relaxation in his posture, a tell that something significant had changed. 3 minutes later, raised voices could be heard in the corridor outside their suite. The door opened to reveal one of Blackwood's security team, visibly tense. "Mr. Blackwood requests your presence immediately," he announced, addressing all. 3 of them. They were escorted rapidly through the facility to what appeared to be a central operations room. Multiple security feeds displayed exterior approaches to the building, where several marked vehicles with federal government insignia had established positions around the private aviation terminal. Richard Blackwood stood at a central console, his previously composed demeanor replaced by cold calculation. When he saw them enter, his expression hardened. "It seems our negotiations have been preempted," he stated flatly. "Dr. Kim's political connections have complicated matters unnecessarily. Senate Intelligence Committee authority supersedes private security protocols," Dr. Kim replied calmly. "Even those operating under corporate contracts with intelligence agencies." Blackwood's smile was devoid of warmth. "Committee jurisdiction is debatable when classified technologies are involved. This could move through courts for years while the evidence remains secured under protective orders. Unless it's already been publicly documented," Dr. Kim countered. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Blackwood's face. "The drive has been secured. Your satellite device was disabled. There were redundancies," Dr. Kim stated simply. "My age has made me cautious about single points of failure." The implication hung in the air. The evidence might already be beyond Blackwood's reach. Sarah maintained her neutral expression, though internally she wondered what backup system Dr. Kim had implemented. His earlier comment echoed in her mind. The evidence is what matters, not any individual person. Blackwood appeared to reassess his position, glancing at the security feeds where federal marshals could now be seen establishing a perimeter around the building. "A tactical withdrawal may be necessary," he finally said, addressing his security team. "Prepare the contingency exit and secure the primary evidence. I'll handle our guests personally." The phrasing sent alarm signals through Sarah's tactical assessment. Contingency exit suggested Blackwood had anticipated potential federal intervention. "Handle our guests," carried ominous implications given the changing power dynamics. "Mom," Lily whispered, sensing the shifting tension. "Stay close to me," Sarah responded, positioning herself slightly ahead of her daughter as Blackwood approached. "It seems our discussion will need to continue elsewhere," he announced, gesturing toward a door at the rear of the operations center, a secure facility better suited to sensitive debriefing. "Federal marshals have the building surrounded," Sarah pointed out. "Removing us from the premises would constitute kidnapping under federal law. This facility has multiple classified egress routes established under National Security Directive 1067, Blackwood replied smoothly. "Legally designated for personnel extraction during national security emergencies. We'll simply be following established protocols." Dr. Kim stepped forward, his frail appearance belying the steel in his voice. "Mr. Blackwood, whatever you're considering will only compound your legal exposure. The evidence already exists in multiple secure locations. Senator Levine has physical possession of duplicate materials I provided before departing Portland." For a moment, doubt crossed Blackwood's face, a calculation of risk versus reward playing out behind his eyes. Then his expression hardened into resolve. "Move them to extraction point B," he ordered the security team. "I'll handle the federal response." Two security personnel moved toward them, but Sarah was already in motion. Years of combat training triggered an instinctive response. She pivoted, keeping Lily behind her, while simultaneously striking the nearest guard with a precise blow to the throat. The man staggered backward, gasping for air. The second guard reached for his weapon, but Dr. Kim, displaying surprising agility for his age, swung his walking cane in a practiced arc that connected with the man's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor as Sarah launched herself forward, driving her shoulder into the guard's solar plexus. "Run!" she shouted to Lily, gesturing toward the main corridor where federal authorities were presumably advancing. Chaos erupted in the operations center as alarms blared and emergency protocols activated. Blackwood barked orders to remaining personnel while reaching for his own weapon. "Doctor." Kim seized the momentary confusion to retrieve a small object from his pocket, a civilian emergency beacon that emitted a piercing sound while flashing bright blue. "Federal marshals! This location is now under Senate committee jurisdiction." The authoritative voice boomed from the corridor as armed personnel in tactical gear breached the main entrance to the operations center. Sarah grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her toward the federal team, identifying herself as they approached. "Sarah Mitchell, former military intelligence. We're the material witnesses." The lead marshal, a woman with captain's insignia, nodded sharply. "Captain Reyes, Federal Marshal Service. Senator Levine sent us. Are you in possession of the evidence?" "Blackwood confiscated it," Sarah replied, positioning Lily safely behind the advancing federal team. "But Dr. Kim claims duplicates are already with Senator Levine." "Confirmed," Captain Reyes responded, gesturing for additional marshals to secure the room. "The senator received a data package 1 hour ago via special courier. Authentication is already underway." Richard Blackwood stood motionless at the center of the room, his security team disarmed and secured by the federal marshals. His expression revealed nothing as Captain Reyes approached him with restraints. "Richard Blackwood, you're being detained under Senate Intelligence Committee authority, pending investigation into unauthorized domestic surveillance operations and obstruction of a federal investigation." "This is a jurisdictional overreach," Blackwood replied coldly. "My company operates under classified contracts with multiple federal agencies. This detention will be challenged at the highest levels." "Challenge away," Captain Reyes replied, securing the restraints. "But maybe check who signed the detention order first. When the Vice Chair of Senate Intelligence issues direct authorization, jurisdictional arguments tend to fail." Dr. Kim approached Sarah and Lily, as Blackwood was, led away, his earlier frailty seemingly diminished now that the immediate danger had passed. "Your contingency worked," Sarah observed quietly. "Multiple redundancies," the elderly scientist confirmed with the faintest hint of satisfaction. "The package I prepared in Portland contained not only the evidence from Westridge, but also my sworn testimony regarding its authentication. Senator Levine had everything needed to initiate committee action regardless of our fate. You anticipated Blackwood might intercept us." Dr. Kim's expression grew somber. "I've observed how power operates for over 50 years, Ms. Mitchell. When certain types of evidence threatens certain types of people, extraordinary measures become predictable responses." Captain Reyes rejoined them, holstering her weapon as the situation stabilized. "We need to move you to secure transportation. Senator Levine has arranged protective custody until formal hearings can be scheduled." "What about our home?" Lily asked suddenly. "All our stuff is still there." The simple question, so normal amidst the extraordinary circumstances, momentarily silenced the adults. Captain Reyes recovered first, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "We'll have, agents secure your residence, young lady. Nothing will be disturbed until you can safely return." As they were escorted from the facility to armored federal vehicles, Sarah maintained her tactical awareness, scanning for threats, assessing exit routes, categorizing personnel, habits ingrained through years of intelligence work. But beneath this professional vigilance, a profound realization was forming. Their impulsive purchase of an abandoned homestead had placed them at the center of what might become the most significant domestic surveillance scandal since Watergate. The federal convoy departed SeaTac with full police escort, lights flashing as they navigated through emergency traffic lanes. Sarah held Lily close in the back of an armored SUV while Dr. Kim rode beside them, his eyes closed either in exhaustion or meditation, perhaps both. "Where are they taking us?" Lily whispered. "Somewhere safe," Sarah assured her. Though details hadn't been provided, standard protocol for protective custody. "Somewhere we can tell our story properly." Dr. Kim opened his eyes, regarding them with unexpected warmth. "The Fisher Building in downtown Seattle. Senator Levine maintains a secure office there for committee business when she's in the state. We'll be debriefed and then transferred to Washington for formal testimony." The convoy turned toward downtown Seattle, the city skyline glittering against the evening darkness. Sarah found herself wondering if they would ever return to the simple life they had imagined when purchasing Westridge Homestead. The rural sanctuary they had barely begun to create now seemed a distant memory, replaced by the complex reality of their current circumstances. "Will we ever go home?" Lily asked, echoing her mother's thoughts with uncanny precision. Before Sarah could formulate a response that balanced honesty with reassurance, Dr. Kim spoke. "Home is rarely about physical location," he observed gently. "Though I understand the attachment to place. When this matter concludes, you'll have choices, perhaps more than you had before." The Fisher Building's underground parking structure had been cleared of all vehicles except federal assets. Their SUV descended to the lowest level, where a secure elevator provided direct access to upper floors without passing through public areas. Captain Reyes remained with them throughout, her team maintaining protective positions with professional efficiency. "Senator Levine is already waiting upstairs," she informed them as the elevator ascended. "She's been personally overseeing this operation since Dr. Kim's initial contact." The elevator opened directly into a suite of offices bearing no external identification, just the understated security typical of high-level government operations. Senator Eleanor Levine waited in a conference room surrounded by aides and legal counsel. In person, she projected the same formidable presence that had made her a force on the Intelligence Committee. Tall, silver-haired, with the poised attentiveness of someone who missed nothing. "Dr. Kim," she acknowledged with visible relief. "Ms. Mitchell and Lily, I presume. Please sit. You must be exhausted." The senator dismissed most staff, retaining only her chief counsel and security director. Once the room had cleared, her formal demeanor softened slightly. "Daniel tells me you discovered something quite extraordinary beneath your new home," she addressed Sarah directly. "Something that numerous people would prefer remained hidden." "A fully operational signals intelligence facility that should have been decommissioned decades ago," Sarah confirmed, "with evidence of unauthorized domestic surveillance continuing well after official programs were terminated." Senator Levine nodded. "The materials Daniel sent ahead are already being authenticated by committee staff. Preliminary assessment suggests they're genuine and profoundly disturbing." "Richard Blackwood wasn't acting alone," Dr. Kim added. "The operational logs implicate officials across multiple agencies and administrations. This transcends partisan boundaries, which makes it simultaneously more significant and more dangerous," the senator observed. "Powerful interests on both sides of the political spectrum will resist exposure." Sarah glanced at Lily, who was valiantly fighting exhaustion after their ordeal. "My primary concern is my daughter's safety. Whatever happens next, she needs protection." Senator Levine's expression softened as she regarded the 12-year-old. "Of course, we've arranged secure accommodations with full protective detail until formal hearings begin. No expense spared." "And after the hearings?" Sarah pressed. "Whistleblower protections have proven inadequate in similar cases. This situation has direct Senate committee oversight," the senator assured her. "I've personally guaranteed your security and future considerations, including relocation with new identities if necessary." Dr. Kim cleared his throat gently. "Perhaps we might continue tomorrow after everyone has rested. It's been a rather demanding day, particularly for the young lady." Senator Levine immediately shifted focus, instructing her security director to escort them to prepared accommodations within the building. A fully furnished apartment maintained for visiting dignitaries requiring discreet protection. As they settled into the secure residence, federal agents established positions throughout the building's access points. The apartment itself was comfortable, though impersonal, high-end hotel amenities without individual character. Still, after their ordeal, the simple luxuries of safety, hot showers and clean beds held profound appeal. Lily fell asleep almost immediately in the smaller bedroom, emotional and physical exhaustion finally overwhelming her remarkable resilience. Sarah sat watching her daughter breathe peacefully, marveling at how quickly their lives had transformed. 3 weeks ago, they had been renovating a rural homestead, focused on modest ambitions of self-sufficiency and privacy. Now they were material witnesses in what might become a landmark case against domestic surveillance overreach. She found Dr. Kim in the apartment's living area, standing by the window overlooking Seattle's nighttime panorama. Despite the day's exertions, he maintained his composed demeanor, though Sarah noticed the slight tremor in his hands that betrayed his physical condition. "You knew this might happen," she stated quietly. "Not the specifics, but the general scenario. That's why you had contingencies prepared." Dr. Kim continued gazing at the city lights. "I've spent decades watching how power protects itself, Ms. Mitchell. When Harold Jensen died without passing his records to trusted parties, I suspected the Westridge facility contained something significant. I simply lacked legitimate access to investigate until we bought it at auction." "An unexpected development," he acknowledged, though perhaps not entirely coincidental. Sarah's intelligence training triggered immediate alertness. "What do you mean?" Dr. Kim turned from the window, his expression thoughtful. "The property was deliberately undervalued to discourage commercial developers while remaining accessible to the right buyer. Jensen left specific provisions in his estate. Planning, the property could only be sold at public auction with minimal advertising, almost as if he were waiting for someone with the right background to recognize its potential importance. You think he wanted someone like me to find it? A former intelligence officer who might understand the significance? Jensen was methodical in his record-keeping. The fact that he preserved evidence rather than destroying it suggests intent for eventual discovery. He created a time capsule of sorts, waiting for the right moment and the right person. The possibility that their chance purchase had been part of a long dormant plan was simultaneously unsettling and oddly reassuring. If Jensen had deliberately preserved evidence of unauthorized surveillance with the intention of eventual exposure, then Sarah and Lily were fulfilling a purpose greater than their personal situation. "What happens next?" she asked, professional focus returning now that her daughter was safely resting. "Senate Intelligence Committee hearings," Dr. Kim replied. "Closed sessions initially, given the classified nature of the materials. I will provide primary testimony, establishing chain of custody and authentication of the evidence." And Blackwood? His legal resources are substantial, but the evidence appears quite damning. His connections will likely negotiate some form of cooperation agreement to mitigate personal consequences. Sarah considered the broader implications. The surveillance infrastructure itself. How extensive was it? The Westridge facility was just one node. Or, based on preliminary assessment of the operational logs, at least 12 similar installations were maintained after official program termination. A shadow network operating without oversight or accountability. The scale of the operation suggested involvement at the highest levels of government across multiple administrations, a systemic failure of oversight with profound constitutional implications. What had begun as a Cold War intelligence gathering operation had apparently metastasized into something far more insidious. "Why are you helping us?" Sarah finally asked the question that had been lingering since their first meeting. "Beyond professional ethics or moral considerations, you've placed yourself at considerable risk despite your condition." Dr. Kim's expression grew distant, memories visibly surfacing behind his composed exterior. "I helped design the original Silverfish protocols in 1972, brilliant systems for their time, focused exclusively on foreign signals intelligence during the Cold War. When I discovered they were being repurposed for domestic surveillance, I resigned. In protest." He paused, gathering thoughts or perhaps strength. "What I failed to do was expose the program's continuation. I chose quiet retirement over public whistleblowing, telling myself others would maintain proper oversight. That decision has haunted me for decades." The admission carried the weight of long-held regret, a burden Sarah recognized from her own experience with institutional failures. How many others in the intelligence community had made similar compromises, allowing questionable programs to continue rather than risking careers and reputations? "So, this is atonement," she observed without judgment. "Let's call it correction of a professional error," Dr. Kim replied with the ghost of a smile. "Whatever remaining time I have seems well spent addressing past mistakes." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the apartment door. Captain Reyes entered after security protocols, her professional demeanor unchanged despite the late hour. "Senator Levine asked me to inform you that committee staff have completed preliminary authentication of the evidence," she reported. "They've confirmed the documents are genuine classified materials from authorized government systems. Formal hearings will convene in Washington the day after tomorrow." "That's unusually rapid for congressional action," Dr. Kim observed. "The vice chair has expedited procedures given the national security implications," Captain Reyes explained. and the evidence timeline suggests ongoing operations that may require immediate cessation. After she departed, Sarah and Dr. Kim exchanged glances, both recognizing the significance of this development. Committee authentication meant the evidence could not be easily dismissed or suppressed. The institutional machinery of congressional oversight had been activated beyond any individual's ability to halt. "It's really happening," Sarah said quietly. "Jensen's records will become part of the official record." Dr. Kim nodded, his expression revealing cautious satisfaction. "The system sometimes works, Ms. Mitchell. Not perfectly, not always, but occasionally accountability prevails." As federal protection teams maintained their vigilance throughout the building, Sarah found herself contemplating the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. A desperate purchase with their last resources had placed them at the center of a national security revelation that might fundamentally alter the relationship between intelligence agencies and democratic oversight. Westridge Homestead had been meant as their sanctuary and fresh start. Instead, it had become the catalyst for exposing decades of unauthorized surveillance, a different kind of beginning than they had imagined, but perhaps equally meaningful. In the quiet apartment, high above Seattle's glittering nightscape, Sarah Mitchell made a silent promise to both her sleeping daughter and herself. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, knowing they had honored the trust unknowingly placed in them when they purchased an abandoned homestead with their last dollar. The Senate Intelligence Committee hearing room was designed to balance the competing demands of transparency and national security, elegant enough to project governmental authority, secure enough to discuss classified information without risk of compromise. Sarah Mitchell sat at the witness table beside Dr. Kim, watching committee members file in with their aides and security personnel. Despite her military background and intelligence training, she felt profoundly out of place in this rarefied environment of political power. Final authentication confirmed on all evidence materials, Senator Levine announced, calling the closed session to order. This hearing will address unauthorized continuation of Operation Silverfish beyond its official termination date, with specific focus on domestic surveillance activities conducted without proper legal authorization or oversight. Camera operators positioned in discreet corners adjusted their equipment. The proceedings would remain classified until redaction review, with only approved portions eventually released to the public. Sarah noticed Richard Blackwood seated. With his legal team 3 rows behind the witness table, his expression impassive as he watched the proceedings unfold. "Ms. Mitchell," Senator Levine began, "please state for the record how you came to possess the evidence materials related to Operation Silverfish." Sarah leaned toward the microphone, her voice steadier than she felt. "On April 17th, I purchased Westridge Homestead at county auction after the property had been seized for tax delinquency following Harold Jensen's death. During renovation work approximately 3 weeks later, my daughter and I discovered a hidden access panel leading to an underground facility beneath the main house structure. This facility contained communications equipment and sealed document cases with operational logs and surveillance transcripts. And you recognize the significance of these materials based on your military intelligence background?" "Yes, Senator. I served 8 years as a signals intelligence analyst with Joint Special Operations Command before transitioning to civilian contracting. The facility design and documentation formats were immediately recognizable as classified military intelligence. Infrastructure." Senator Hargrove, the committee's ranking minority member, interjected with barely concealed skepticism. "Ms. Mitchell, your military separation occurred under contested circumstances. Some might question whether your interpretation of these materials has been colored by personal grievances against intelligence community management." The implication was clear, an attempt to characterize her as a disgruntled former employee rather than a credible witness. Sarah had anticipated this line of attack. Senator, my separation followed established whistleblower protocols regarding procedural violations within my unit. The subsequent Inspector General investigation substantiated. My reports, though recommended administrative rather than criminal remedies. Those circumstances have no bearing on the authenticity of materials discovered at Westridge Homestead, which have been independently verified by this committee's technical staff. Dr. Kim shifted slightly beside her, a subtle signal of support. The elderly scientist's presence lent crucial credibility to her testimony, his decades of respected service providing a counterweight to attempts at character diminishment. Senator Levine redirected the questioning. Dr. Kim, as former Chief Cryptographic Systems Architect for Operation Silverfish, can you confirm the authenticity of the materials recovered from Westridge Homestead? Without question, Dr. Kim replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. The operational logs contain cryptographic signatures and authentication protocols that cannot be falsified without access to classified key materials stored in segregated government facilities. These documents are genuine classified materials generated by authorized government systems. And do these materials indicate continuation of domestic surveillance activities beyond the program's official termination date? They document systematic collection of communications data from domestic sources continuing for at least 17 years after congressional defunding and official program closure. More troubling, they reveal deliberate circumvention of oversight, mechanisms established to prevent precisely this type of unauthorized surveillance. The committee room fell silent as the implications settled across the assembled officials. Senator Hargrove leaned forward, his earlier skepticism recalibrating toward the seriousness of the evidence. Who authorized this continuation, Dr. Kim? The operational logs implicate officials across multiple agencies and administrations, Senator. This wasn't a partisan initiative, but rather a systematic failure of oversight spanning decades. The authorized signatures include 3 former directors of national intelligence, 2 FBI directors, and numerous private contractors operating under classified government contracts. Senator Levine directed the committee's attention to specific documents displayed on secure monitors. Document SV7734 appears to show private communications being intercepted from journalists investigating defense procurement irregularities. Document SV8901 contains surveillance of federal judges overseeing cases involving intelligence agencies. The pattern suggests targeting of individuals positioned to expose or limit precisely these types of activities. For the next 3 hours, Sarah and Dr. Kim methodically walked the committee through the evidence recovered from Westridge Homestead. The operational logs revealed a shadow surveillance apparatus that had continued collecting domestic communications long after official authorization ended. A self-perpetuating system that protected its own existence by monitoring those who might expose it. Richard Blackwood was called to testify next, his corporate composure temporarily abandoned as he confronted the overwhelming documentation of his involvement. His testimony quickly shifted from denial to mitigation. Operation Silverfish continued because it provided critical intelligence unavailable through authorized channels, he insisted. The post-9/11 environment demanded capabilities beyond what public legislation permitted. We maintained these operations under classified executive authorities that superseded standard congressional oversight. Could you identify these supposed executive authorities? Senator Levine requested, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. Blackwood glanced at his attorneys before responding. Those directives themselves remain classified at compartmented levels above this committee's current authorization. A convenient circle of secrecy, Senator Hargrove observed dryly. Unauthorized operations justified by authorizations that cannot be examined. By late afternoon, the committee moved into closed deliberation while Sarah and Dr. Kim were escorted to a secure waiting area. Federal protective details maintained positions throughout the building, a reminder that the day's revelations had powerful enemies beyond Blackwood himself. "Will it matter?" Sarah asked quietly, the question that had been haunting her since their discovery. "All this evidence, these hearings, will anything actually change?" Dr. Kim considered her question with characteristic thoughtfulness. Systems resist correction, especially systems designed to operate in secrecy. But occasionally, exposure reaches critical mass where institutional self-preservation requires visible reform. That's not particularly reassuring. History offers limited comfort regarding intelligence oversight, he acknowledged. But records also show moments when democratic institutions reassert control. The Church Committee findings, Pfizer court establishment, post-Snowden reforms. Imperfect corrections, certainly, but meaningful nonetheless. They fell silent as a staff member entered to inform them the committee had reached preliminary findings and would reconvene shortly. When they returned to the hearing room, the atmosphere had shifted perceptibly. Committee members displayed the somber unity that emerges when partisan differences are temporarily superseded by institutional threats. Senator Levine addressed them directly. The committee has unanimously determined that Operation Silverfish continued unauthorized domestic surveillance in direct contravention of congressional defunding and program termination orders. We will immediately refer criminal charges to the Department of Justice regarding multiple violations of federal law. She paused, glancing at her colleagues before continuing. Additionally, we are establishing a special oversight task force with extraordinary access authorities to identify and terminate any similar unauthorized programs that may exist across the intelligence community. Senator Hargrove added, "The materials recovered from Westridge Homestead provide comprehensive documentation of what appears to be the most extensive unauthorized domestic surveillance operation since COINTELPRO. This committee extends its gratitude to Ms. Mitchell and Dr. Kim for bringing this matter to appropriate governmental attention, despite considerable personal risk." The formal acknowledgement was unexpected, a public validation that transformed Sarah from potential troublemaker to recognized whistleblower. She felt a complex mixture of vindication and apprehension, knowing that today's proceedings would forever alter her life trajectory. As the hearing concluded, Senator Levine approached them privately. "The committee has approved extensive witness protection measures for both of you. Ms. Mitchell, this includes relocation options, financial compensation for your property, and educational provisions for your daughter." "And Westridge Homestead?" Sarah asked, surprised by her lingering attachment to the property they had barely begun to make their own. "The facility beneath your property will be properly decommissioned by authorized personnel. Once that process concludes, you would have the option to retain ownership with appropriate security clearance provisions, though our security assessment suggests relocation might better ensure your family's long-term safety." It was a generous package, more comprehensive than typical whistleblower protections, reflecting the significance of what they had exposed and the potential dangers they still faced from those implicated in the unauthorized program. Dr. Kim declined similar protective measures. "My medical prognosis makes relocation rather pointless, Senator. I prefer to spend my remaining time in familiar surroundings, continuing my research and writing. At minimum, we'll provide security details," Senator Levine insisted. The committee, won't leave you unprotected after your service today." As they prepared to depart the hearing room, Richard Blackwood approached under escort by federal marshals. His earlier corporate polish had hardened into cold calculation. "This isn't over," he stated quietly. "You've exposed one program while dozens continue operating with full authorization. The security apparatus exists because it must, regardless of public sentiment or political theater." "Perhaps," Dr. Kim replied evenly, "but democratic systems require periodic correction when the balance shifts too far toward unaccountable power. Today represents one such correction." Blackwood's responding smile held no warmth. "Corrections are temporary. Security imperatives are permanent. History favors my perspective, Doctor." The exchange captured the fundamental tension at the heart of intelligence oversight, the perpetual struggle between security demands and democratic accountability. Sarah recognized that today's revelations, however significant, represented just one battle in that ongoing conflict. Federal marshals escorted them from the Capitol through underground passages to avoid media exposure, eventually emerging at a secure government facility where Lily waited under protective custody. The 12-year-old launched herself into Sarah's arms with unrestrained relief, the forced separation during the hearings having tested her remarkable composure. "Is it over?" Lily asked, the question containing layers of meaning beyond the immediate proceedings. Sarah exchanged glances with Dr. Kim before answering. "The hearing part is over. Now we need to make some decisions about what happens next." That evening, in the privacy of their secure accommodations, Sarah explained the committee's findings and protection offers to her daughter with characteristic honesty. "We have options now. We could start fresh somewhere new with financial security or return to Westridge once the government finishes securing the facility." Lily considered this with surprising thoughtfulness. "What about your whistleblowing? Won't people still be angry about what you exposed?" The question revealed her daughter's perceptive understanding of their situation. Sarah had exposed serious governmental overreach, but in doing so had made powerful enemies who might harbor long memories. There will always be people who believe security justifies any action, Sarah acknowledged, and others who believe transparency must exist regardless of consequences. Finding balance between those perspectives isn't easy. Like Dr. Kim said, corrections are necessary sometimes. Sarah smiled at her daughter's recall. Exactly. Systems need occasional recalibration to maintain their integrity. "Could we maybe visit Westridge before deciding?" Lily asked. "I left my rock collection in the windowsill." The simple request, so normal amidst extraordinary circumstances, momentarily overwhelmed Sarah's carefully maintained composure. All the high-level hearings and national security implications weighed against her daughter's concern for a humble collection of river stones gathered during their first weeks of rural life. "I think that could be arranged," she managed through sudden emotion. 3 days later, their protective detail coordinated with local authorities to facilitate a brief return to Westridge Homestead. Government vehicles lined the property's driveway as technical teams continued working to properly decommission the underground facility. Yellow caution tape cordoned off certain areas, and suited figures carried equipment between trucks and the house. Captain Reyes remained with them as they approached the farmhouse, maintaining professional vigilance despite the apparent security of the controlled environment. "We've secured your personal belongings in the main bedroom," she informed them. "Take whatever you need for immediate purposes. The rest can be transported once you've made relocation decisions." Sarah paused on the porch, momentarily overwhelmed by competing emotions. This modest structure had represented their fresh start, a place to rebuild after career setbacks and personal struggles. Though they had occupied it for barely 3 weeks, the homestead had briefly embodied their hopes for independence and stability. Inside, the farmhouse showed signs of thorough searching, furniture slightly repositioned, drawers partially open, the organized disorder of professional examination rather than malicious ransacking. Sarah noted with approval that the federal teams had maintained basic respect for their personal property while conducting necessary security procedures. Lily moved directly to the kitchen windowsill, where her rock collection remained undisturbed. Small treasures gathered from the property's stream during their first weekend of ownership. She carefully transferred them into a cloth bag, handling each stone with the reverence children reserve for objects adults might consider insignificant. The entrance to the hidden room has been permanently sealed, Captain Reyes explained as they moved through the house. Standard procedure for decommissioned sensitive sites. The underground facility has been cleared of all operational equipment and will be filled with stabilization material once technical assessment concludes. Sarah nodded, understanding the protocols from her own intelligence background. The listening post beneath their kitchen would be rendered permanently inaccessible. Buried beneath concrete and engineering fill, its secrets contained through physical impossibility of future access. As they gathered essential belongings, Sarah found herself drawn to the farmhouse's back porch with its view across the sloping property toward distant mountains. This perspective had sold her on Westridge initially, the sense of expansiveness and possibility it evoked after years of urban constraints. Dr. Kim joined her there, his movements slower today as his condition exacted its inevitable toll. "Have you decided?" he asked without preamble. "Not yet," Sarah admitted. "Part of me wants to reclaim this place, finish what we started and prove we won't be driven away. Another part recognizes the practical security advantages of relocation and anonymity." "Both paths have merit," he observed, "though children often benefit from stability once they've experienced disruption." "Lily's remarkably adaptable," Sarah noted with maternal pride, more concerned about her rock collection than national security implications. "A healthy perspective," Dr. Kim smiled faintly. "Perhaps wisdom lies in focusing on what truly matters rather than abstract principles." They stood in companionable silence, watching technical teams move efficiently around the property. The juxtaposition was striking, a pastoral setting overlaid with the mechanical precision of government operations. It seemed an apt metaphor for their entire situation. Simplicity complicated by larger forces beyond individual control. "I've been offered a position with the Senate Oversight Task Force," Sarah revealed quietly. "Advisory capacity on detecting unauthorized surveillance programs based on my technical background." Dr. Kim nodded thoughtfully. The poacher turned gamekeeper. There's historical precedent for reformation through former insiders. "I haven't accepted yet. It would mean relocating to Washington, where your experience might prevent future silverfish operations," he observed, "a meaningful contribution." Before Sarah could respond, Lily emerged onto the porch, her rocky collection secured and a sketchbook tucked under her arm. "I found my drawings too," she announced with satisfaction, "the ones of how I wanted to fix up my room." Captain Reyes appeared in the doorway. "We should depart soon. The technical team needs to resume unrestricted operations." As they prepared to leave, Sarah paused for a final look at the homestead, taking mental photographs of its weathered exterior, the surrounding meadows, the distant tree line where they had fled just weeks earlier. Whatever decision they ultimately made, Westridge had irrevocably altered their life trajectory. The drive back to their secure accommodations passed in contemplative silence, each processing their brief return differently. For Sarah, the visit had clarified certain realities. While Westridge represented their initial hopes, its discovery had opened unexpected pathways that might better serve their future. That evening, After Lily had gone to bed, Sarah received notification that Senator Levine wished to speak with her privately. The senator arrived without entourage, her official position temporarily set aside for a more personal conversation. The committee has received preliminary response from intelligence community leadership regarding our findings, she began without preamble. There's substantial institutional resistance to acknowledge the unauthorized nature of silverfish's continued operations. That's not surprising, Sarah replied. Admitting 17 years of illegal surveillance would trigger massive litigation and oversight reform. Precisely, which makes your potential advisory role with our task force particularly valuable. We need insiders who understand both the technology and the culture of these agencies. Sarah considered the implicit offer carefully. My primary concern remains my daughter's well-being. These past weeks have already demanded extraordinary adaptability from her, which is why the committee has authorized exceptional support measures, Senator Levine responded. Beyond standard relocation provisions, we're prepared to offer educational benefits, housing allowance in a neighborhood of your choosing, and flexible working arrangements that accommodate parenting priorities. The comprehensiveness of the offer reflected both the value they placed on her expertise and recognition of the sacrifice whistleblowing had already required. Still, Sarah hesitated, wary of exchanging one institutional entanglement for another. I need assurance that my role would involve genuine oversight authority, not simply procedural validation of existing practices. Senator Levine nodded, understanding the concern. The Special Task Force reports directly to the committee chairperson. Bypassing traditional intelligence community management structures, your observations and recommendations would reach decision-makers without intermediary filtering. It was a meaningful guarantee, structural independence that might allow effective oversight rather than symbolic participation. Sarah found herself weighing this opportunity against their original plans for rural self-sufficiency, recognizing that Westridge's hidden secrets had fundamentally altered their available pathways. I'd need to discuss this with Lily before making any commitment, she finally said. Her stability matters more than any professional opportunity. Of course, Senator Levine agreed. Take whatever time you need. The position remains open exclusively to you, based on the committee's unanimous recommendation. After the senator departed, Sarah sat alone in the secure apartment's living room, mentally mapping potential futures that had emerged from their chance discovery. The rural sanctuary they had briefly imagined at Westridge now seemed a distant possibility, replaced by unexpected opportunities and responsibilities. When morning came, she found Lily already awake, organizing her recovered rock collection. On the apartment's coffee table, the simple domestic activity amid their extraordinary circumstances brought unexpected perspective to Sarah's decision process. I've been offered a job helping make sure what we found at Westridge doesn't happen again, she explained, settling beside her daughter. It would mean moving to Washington instead of going back to our homestead. Lily considered this with characteristic thoughtfulness. Would you be helping fix things that are wrong, like you tried to do before? The question referenced Sarah's earlier whistleblowing experience that had ultimately cost her military career. Yes, but with official support this time. The people who want my help have actual authority to make changes. Then you should do it, Lily concluded with 12-year-old certainty. That's important work. What about our plans for Westridge? The garden we were going to plant, the workshop we talked about building. Lily shrugged with surprising pragmatism. We can have a garden wherever we live. And you always said home is about people, not places. The simple wisdom momentarily overwhelmed Sarah's carefully maintained composure. All the complex national security implications and career considerations faded against her daughter's uncomplicated perspective on what truly mattered. Later that day, she contacted Senator Levine to accept the position with specific conditions regarding working hours and educational arrangements for Lily. The senator readily agreed, having anticipated these priorities based on their previous conversations. Dr. Kim visited that evening. His condition noticeably progressed, yet his mind, maintaining its characteristic precision. When Sarah informed him of her decision, he nodded with quiet approval. Harold Jensen would be satisfied, he observed. His preserved evidence found its way to someone capable of proper action. I still wonder if he specifically anticipated someone like me finding it, Sarah mused. The property's sale restrictions, the accessible hidden entrance, almost as if he designed it for discovery by the right person. Intelligence officers develop instincts for contingency planning, Dr. Kim replied. Perhaps he simply created optimal conditions for eventual discovery, trusting that the right combination of circumstances would eventually emerge. As Dr. Kim prepared to depart, his federal protection detail waiting discreetly by the door, he turned back with uncharacteristic hesitation. I've arranged for certain research materials to be delivered to you should my condition deteriorate more rapidly than anticipated, he said carefully. Technical documentation regarding surveillance, systems that might prove relevant to your new responsibilities. Sarah recognized the significance of this trust, a passing of professional knowledge from one generation of oversight to the next. I'll ensure it's properly utilized, she promised. 2 weeks later, Sarah and Lily relocated to a comfortable townhouse in Arlington, Virginia, with security measures discreetly integrated throughout the property. The Senate Oversight Task Force provided Sarah with appropriate clearances and institutional authority, positioning her uniquely to identify unauthorized surveillance activities similar to those they had discovered at Westridge. The Homestead itself remained in legal limbo, technically still their property, but effectively under government control until decommissioning procedures concluded. Sarah maintained the option to eventually sell it or reclaim it, though practical security considerations made the latter increasingly unlikely. Dr. Kim's health declined more rapidly than expected, his remarkable resilience finally yielding to biological imperatives. He passed away peacefully 6 weeks after the Senate hearings, having lived just long enough to see initial reforms implemented based on the silverfish revelations. True to his word, a secure courier delivered sealed materials to Sarah the day after his memorial service. Technical documentation, along with personal observations accumulated throughout his career. These resources proved invaluable as she established methodologies for detecting surveillance systems operating beyond proper authorization. 4 months into her new role, Sarah received notification that decommissioning procedures at Westridge Homestead had concluded. The property was officially released from government control, though security recommendations still advised against their personal return. We should visit one more time, Lily suggested when Sarah shared this update, to say goodbye properly. The request reflected wisdom beyond her years, recognition that closure required acknowledgement rather than avoidance. Sarah arranged a brief visit through their protective detail, who maintained discreet surveillance throughout their travel. Westridge appeared transformed when they arrived, the underground facility permanently sealed, landscaping restored, and government equipment long removed. To casual observers, it would seem simply a rural property with a modest farmhouse and outbuildings, its hidden history concealed beneath ordinary domesticity. They walked the boundaries together, Sarah, noting with professional approval how thoroughly federal teams had removed evidence of their operations. Lily collected new stones from the stream, explaining that these would join her original collection as a bridge between their past and present lives. "Do you regret buying this place?" Lily asked, as they stood on the back porch one final time, watching sunset illuminate distant mountains. Sarah considered the question carefully. What had begun as a desperate attempt at fresh start had instead become a pivot point, redirecting their entire life trajectory. The abandoned homestead purchased with their last dollar had revealed secrets that transformed not only their personal circumstances, but potentially the oversight mechanisms protecting democratic institutions. "No," she finally answered with certainty. "This place brought challenges we never anticipated, but also opportunities we never imagined. Sometimes the most meaningful paths aren't the ones we initially choose." Lily nodded, her expression suggesting understanding beyond her years. Like Dr. Kim said, systems need correction sometimes. Maybe we were the correction that was needed. Hooray! The simple observation captured something essential about their extraordinary journey, from homesteaders to whistleblowers to oversight participants. Individual actions, however small, occasionally aligned with larger necessities in ways that transcended personal circumstances. As they departed Westridge Homestead for the final time, Sarah noticed a young couple parked at the property's entrance, early 30s, hopeful expressions, clearly considering the potential of the now available rural property. The parallels to their own arrival just months earlier were unmistakable. She considered warning them, sharing cryptic cautions about the property's complex history. Instead, she simply smiled in acknowledgement as they passed. Whatever secrets Westridge might still hold belonged to its future now, not its past. 2 days later, Sarah officially authorized the property's sale through their appointed real estate agent. The proceeds would establish Lily's educational fund, while their new life took shape around Sarah's oversight responsibilities, a different kind of contribution than they had imagined when purchasing an abandoned homestead, but perhaps more meaningful in its broader impact. The Senate Oversight Task Force continued expanding its investigations, with Sarah's technical expertise helping identify several additional unauthorized surveillance operations embedded within legitimate intelligence programs. Each discovery validated the importance of their original whistleblowing, creating cascading reforms throughout the intelligence oversight system. 6 months after relocating to Arlington, Lily displayed adaptable resilience by establishing herself at her new school, making friends, and even starting a geology club inspired by her Westridge rock collection. The trauma of their flight and subsequent protective custody had been processed through professional counseling and the natural healing properties of time and stability. For Sarah, the transition from intelligence operative to oversight specialist represented unexpected career fulfillment, utilizing her technical skills while honoring deeper ethical commitments that had prompted her original whistleblowing. The position Senator Levine had created provided both professional purpose and personal flexibility, allowing her to remain meaningfully present in Lily's daily life. On the anniversary of their discovery at Westridge, Sarah received notification that Richard Blackwood had reached a cooperation agreement with federal prosecutors, providing testimony against higher-level officials in exchange for reduced personal charges. The systemic exposure of unauthorized surveillance operations had expanded far beyond their initial discovery, revealing decades of intelligence community overreach operating beyond legitimate oversight. That evening, Sarah and Lily visited the National Mall, watching sunset illuminate monuments dedicated to democratic ideals that required perpetual defense against both external threats and internal erosion. As darkness fell, and memorial lights activated across the symbolic landscape, Lily arranged stones from Westridge in a small cairn beside the reflecting pool, a personal monument to their unexpected journey. "Do you think it made a difference?" Lily asked, placing the final stone atop her creation. "Everything that happened because we found that hidden room." Sarah considered the question with appropriate seriousness, recognizing its profound implications. Their accidental discovery had exposed unauthorized surveillance, triggered congressional investigation, implicated powerful figures across agencies and administrations, and initiated significant oversight reforms. Yet the fundamental tension between security imperatives and democratic accountability remained unresolved, a perpetual balancing act requiring constant vigilance rather than permanent solution. "I think it made the difference that was possible," she finally answered. "Systems don't transform overnight, but they do respond to correction when evidence becomes undeniable. What we found forced acknowledgement that couldn't be easily dismissed." Lily nodded thoughtfully, her expression reflecting maturity beyond her years. "So we helped fix something that was broken. We contributed to its repair," Sarah amended, gently, along with many others who chose accountability over secrecy. That's how democratic systems heal, through individual choices that eventually align into institutional correction. As they departed the mall, leaving Lily's stone cairn as temporary testament to their experience, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a desperate property purchase and culminated in meaningful institutional reform. The abandoned homestead bought with their last dollar had revealed secrets that national security operations had attempted to suppress for decades, not through any grand conspiracy, but through the simple human tendency toward unaccountable power, unless subjected to persistent oversight. Whatever challenges lay ahead in their new life, Sarah found satisfaction in knowing they had honored the trust unknowingly placed in them when they purchased Westridge Homestead. Harold Jensen's carefully preserved evidence had found its way to individuals capable of ensuring it reached appropriate authorities, completing a chain of accountability that spanned decades and connected strangers through shared commitment to democratic principles. The homestead itself would soon welcome new owners, its secret chamber permanently sealed beneath concrete and engineering fill. But the oversight reforms triggered by its discovery would continue expanding through institutions designed to balance security necessities against democratic accountability, an ongoing correction to systems that required periodic recalibration to maintain their integrity. For Sarah and Lily Mitchell, what had begun as simple search for affordable housing had transformed into participation in essential democratic maintenance. The perpetual work of ensuring powerful institutions remained, accountable to the principles they ostensibly protected. It wasn't the life they had imagined when purchasing an abandoned property with their last dollar, but it had become something perhaps more meaningful: active participation in the continuous renewal of democratic oversight. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.